Now, a couple of days ago, I uploaded a video accusing the DNA research community of bias against J2 men like me, especially J2A men. Now, I did not go into detail on what led me to that accusation. I just talked about the latest paper on Roman migration. But I'm going to go into detail now at exactly what my history is of dealing with DNA research, specifically when it comes to J2A men. And I'm going to show you that there's a pattern of very shady behavior that's going on here. Now, once again, these R1b men whose ancestors come from the steppes of Russia. The oldest sample in that Roman paper is of an Etruscan woman. And she's notable because her parents were apparently very closely related, perhaps second cousins. And again, she's Etruscan. And these men with this steppe ancestry cluster around her. Okay, now during this Iron Age period, this is a period of Etruscan ascendancy. They're on the move throughout Italy. In fact, it's Etruscans who rule Rome. So everything says these men are Etruscan. So say it. Don't just leave the impression that they might be Romans, because they're obviously not Romans. And don't act like we have a whole bunch of people moving into Italy during the empire, because we have the sample of the man with the TY chromosome who is from that group of people. They're already in Italy. There's no mass migration there. Surely there's a lot of people coming in later, but they're already living there. Now, on the connection between men with the J2A Y chromosome and the Romans. Why do I insist that we're there? Because the Romans are Minoans. There are several reasons why this. Okay, now, the Minoans called themselves the captor or the caftor, P or F. Those can go back and forth, okay? The first hill the Romans landed on is Capitol Hill. Capital, captor, that's phonologically virtually the same word. Now, the Romans worshipped a two-faced god Janus, and the Minoans had the two-faced axe. Now, Nana Marnatos, a scholar whose father was also a Minoan scholar, has pointed out that the two-faced axe is probably the two faces of the sun. One as it faces the sky, and one as it faces the sky of the underworld. It's the point where the sun hits the ocean. That's what the two-faced axe is. This is a transition into the underworld. Janus is the god of transitions. So here we have a very good connection between the Romans and the Minoans. Janus is a Roman god. Then we have Quirinus, who is a Roman god. It comes from Quiris, which is a Sabine word for spear. So apparently he's some kind of war god of the spear. Well, there's iconography throughout Minoan Crete of spears. There is a war god of the spear among the Hittites, who were their contemporaries. Idomeneus, or the king of Knossos during the Trojan War. He's famous for his spear. Finally, from the room of the chariot tablets on Knossos, which are written in Mycenaean Greeks, we know that they worshipped a god named Quiricia. Quiricia, Quirinus, Quiris. Spears, war gods. The king of Knossos, Trojan War. See how they all connect? Also, about 50,000 years ago, Rome, central Italy, had some massive volcanic eruptions. You had seas and lakes of lava. This stuff locked up, became rock, of course, and you have the runoff from the Apennine Mountains, right? It's blocked off, and so you now have swamps. And so the people moving into central Italy need to move water. They need to be good at that. Well, guess who was good at moving water? The Minoans. In fact, they may have built the first aqueduct in the world. So they have the skills of the Minoans. Now, most importantly, there's something called the Festus disc. And I believe I've been translating the Festus disc successfully. And the way I've been able to do that is I've been able to assume that the people of Festus spoke some kind of Italic language. Now, how do I know? Because I'm like, well, there seems to be a connection between Festus and the Hittites. Sure enough, the people at Festus specifically and the Hittites are using the same seals for their documents and for their produce and for their wine jugs, which means they seem to have adopted the same administrative apparatus. There's something called kernoi that they're using, which are architectural idioms dealing again with transitions, just like Janus. They play a big part in the Festus disc. What am I saying? That side A of the Festus disc is a hymn to a king or a hero as he transitions into the land of the dead. And there's a Hagia Triada sarcophagus. And then I looked at it and I was just like, oh, the poem that I'm translating on the Festus disc, assuming these people spoke an Italic language, matches the imagery that we see from 400 years later. It's like 400 years later, something like that. on the Agia Triada sarcophagus. Looks like I'm doing a good job. Looks like I've made a good connection between the Romans. And so you're telling me in this paper, well, you know, that this seems to be, that people related to me, that we pour into the Italy during the empire? No, 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 no. We're already in Italy. And that's us. Now, at the time, the Etruscans were beating us up, but we flipped the table on them. Now, mind you, I've said several times in my videos, whatever I'm wrong about, I'm happy to walk back. If I'm wrong about the connection between the Minoans and the Romans, I have no problem with that. I'll walk it back. But what I see here is a lot of shady behavior. Now, let's go into the DNA. Now, when I first started working with the DNA, it was a match made in heaven. We get these DNA on modern Romans because the ancient stuff wasn't pouring in yet. Just starting to trickle in. And they're dividing Italy up, modern Italians, and they're dividing Italy up into different sections. Central Italy, Southern Italy, Northwestern Italy, Northeastern Italy. Oh, it's beautiful. And I'm able to determine from their papers the highest concentration of J2A men in Italy is Central Italy. The oldest bloodlines, Central Italy. Oh, so we come out of Central Italy. The second highest concentration, Southern Italy? No, Northeastern Italy, especially around Venice. So that makes sense. And then Southern Italy. Okay, so we're building the empire. We built a lot of colonies in Southern Italy. Okay, so we're going to, a lot of us down there. There are Greeks there. Okay, so that makes sense. Now, when the empire is falling in the west, we have the Huns coming in, we have the Germans, we're running away, we're running into the swamps where we found the city of Venice. Okay, so along that coast, northeast coast, you see that strip, we're all packed into that area like sardines, we J2A men. And, you know, so it's like, so we build Venice, and we build Constantinople. These are both Roman cities built by Romans, filled with Romans. And so when you look at the Fourth Crusade, when Constantinople was occupied and ruled by Venice, people say, well, that's awful. Well, it was awful. But if you understand the DNA, if you understand the relationships, you understand that Constantinople and Venice are both Roman cities. They spoke Venetian, these guys spoke Greek. They're still Roman cities. It's a civil war over who's going to dominate the Mediterranean. See how DNA helps you straighten this kind of stuff out? Well, then all of a sudden, this modern DNA comes out, and they stopped looking at Central Italy. And they never look at Venice. I've never seen anything come out of Venice. Oh, but they're sure to mention Southern Italy when they, oh, look at all these J2As in Southern Italy. Oh, really? You're throwing me some shade? What exactly are you saying? You don't want to talk about us in Central Italy anymore, or Northeastern Italy, but you want to talk about us in Southern Italy. What's that about? Now, mind you, my family's from Southern Italy. We're from Naples. My great-great-grandfather was a stonemason, came over in 1890. He had a skilled trade. His son was a barber, owned his own barbershop. Small businessman. I'm not ashamed of that, you know. And I don't know what's happening in Southern Italy. I don't know why it hasn't caught up with the rest of Italy. I don't know. But I know that Southern Italy got the raw end of the deal on the reunification. Just like the United States, Southern Italy had trade barriers protecting its industries. So we had industries, people had jobs. The Catholic Church was wealthy, it owned a lot of land, and we used the Catholic Church for our social welfare programs. So now all of a sudden, Italy's united, the trade barriers disappear, the land gets seized from the Catholic Church, we start starving to death, and we start leaving the country, which is what my ancestors did. What happened since then? I don't know. Southern Italy should have caught up. I don't know. This is not a comment on that. But I know this. You seem to be throwing some shade on us J2A men. Now let's look at the ancient DNA. Now there's a place in south central Turkey, the Konya Plain, called Çatalhöyük. It's the biggest settlement in the world by far. It's the Paris of the Neolithic. I think the men who built it, a lot of them are J2A like me. Why is that? Well, there's a place called Ashikli to the northwest. They lived very similar to the people at Çatalhöyük. They had similar crops. They came from the northeast. We seem to have come from the Caucasus Mountains, so it's on our migration route. South central Anatolia, the Konya Plain, those are our oldest bloodlines west of the Caucasus Mountains, our highest concentration other than Cyprus and Crete. Okay? So I'm not out of line for assuming that these people have a J2A Y chromosome. Now there's a place nearby, 6 miles away. It's a teeny tiny site. It was there for maybe 200 years. They bury their dead the same way, 6 miles away. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how many years that is, how far away that is in kilometers. You got half a dozen skeletons, Y chromosomes extracted from samples there. So I'm waiting for stuff to come out of Çatalhöyük. If it's not J2A, I'm fine with it. No, and then a survey comes out of Çatalhöyük. Nothing but women. I think they got one guy, they couldn't get a Y chromosome. Are you kidding me? I don't believe you. I think you're lying. How big is it? It's this huge mound. And when it was discovered, there's an archaeologist on top and there's an archaeologist at the bottom. And he says, it's Neolithic down here. And the guy at the top goes, it's Neolithic up here. And it's in there like this is a vast site. You're going to sit here and tell me that you didn't get any DNA out of Çatalhöyük. I don't believe you. I think you're lying. Now we cut to the Balkan Peninsula. Now these people from Bacikli-Hayuk have a G2A Y chromosome and they're related to the first farmers. So their descendants move into the Balkan Peninsula. They're the Starchevo. Okay. And then all of a sudden, boom, 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 things start changing in the Balkan Peninsula. We have a group of people here building these giant settlements and they're metallurgists. They're the first people in the world to work with metal. Well, guess what? At Çatalhöyük, they're experimenting with metallurgy. They have little copper spheres that they're playing around with, beads that they're playing around with. The Starchevo people had discovered copper. All of a sudden, we have people there building these vast settlements, extracting the copper. I think that's our people. We had the Vinci, the Sopot, the Lingyel, the Cucuteni, the Trypillian. These are all Anatolians. They're building vast settlements. They're living very similar to the people down at Çatalhöyük. So I think there's a connection. Could I get some DNA? No. We have a DNA paper on Neolithic and Chalcolithic and early Bronze Age, western steppes of Russia, Balkan Peninsula, Germany, dozens and dozens of samples. Vinci, Sopot, Lingyel, whatever. Can I get some samples from these people? No. No samples. I don't believe you. I don't believe you. On the Indo-European language. We're speaking an Indo-European language in South Central Anatolia. We're surrounded by mountains. We're surrounded by people who don't speak it. Nobody's invading us. There's no migration. Why would we be speaking any language other than where we invent metallurgy? We're building vast settlements that dwarf the original city-states of Mesopotamia. Why would we be speaking anybody's language other than our own? Well, the Indo-European language is associated with the wheel. The wheel was probably discovered in the Balkan Peninsula where we were. That's where it first shows up. Well, we got the horse. The first evidence of horses being used for domestic purposes, not to be confused with domestication, are Trypillian, full of Anatolians. There's no reason not to assume we're not the steppe. We're not the Indo-Europeans. Now, we have a lot of J2A men in India. Not all of them are in the caste system. Those of them who are, almost exclusively, they're all Brahmin. And their nearest relatives, Serbia, the Balkan Peninsula. It's the only group for which that's true, that are almost exclusively Brahmin. Not true for the R1Bs, not true for the R1As. In this paper, and then of course we have the Greek paper on Greek DNA, ancient DNA, J2A all over the place. But even with the Minoans, there is a frustrating gap because there's a group of people, probably with J2A, living on Crete. And then you have a big, giant migration into Crete about 2200 BC. There's some kind of ecological catastrophe. How big was it? Well, it affected North America. North America, China, India, Egypt, North Africa was grassland and wetland. And you see how it's a desert today? That's when it all turned into a desert. That's how bad it was. And you have a bunch of people crashing into Crete. Knossos and Festos doubles in size. You have a migration of people at the right time who could be speaking an Indo-European language, who could be speaking a form of an Italic language. The timing is perfect. And then the DNA paper comes in on the Minoans. Nothing. We got the part right at the beginning of that migration, and we got a part 200 years after the Minoans have ended. Nothing in between. Yet again, I have a gap. This is getting old. Stop playing your shady little games. You know, there was a guy up in the Netherlands from the Merovingian era. The J2AY chromosome, very similar. He was a chieftain, very similar to mine. He was a chieftain. 2 horses were sacrificed at his gravesite. So while they're digging this thing up, one night somebody sneaks into the camp and steals his body. Steals his body. You're going to tell me there ain't some shady business? There's some shady business going on in the DNA research community. Get it fixed.